All right, everybody, so we have a very special guest on the show today. The man, the myth, the legend, the wizard, Mr. Jordan Rudess. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Yeah,
Good.
doing good.
So we're down in Orlando. Today's your second night in a row, right?
Well, let's see. This is the first night in Orlando, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Played Clearwater last night. I caught that. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know you're a busy man. Let's get right into these questions. So most of these questions came from a lot of our listeners. You know, I had them kind of put it in, so
Nice.
I have no control over what they asked, but no.
Good. Yeah, right.
All right, so Jordan, so question number one. So obviously you guys have recently announced that you'll be performing Images and Words next year in its entirety for the 25th anniversary,
Right.
which is great news for a lot of fans. We all
Yeah,
love that album.
yeah.
So how did that kind of originate? Like, where did that idea come from?
Well, it is the 25th anniversary of the album, so we wanted to think of something that we could do to keep on going and touring, and it just seemed like a logical kind of cool thing to do. And when we actually, it was John Petrucci who kind of presented it and said, guys, we should do this. And everybody was like, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
So here you go.
Awesome. So I know obviously you weren't in the band yet when Images and Words was created. Obviously a lot of fans think that's a very special album. What did you think about it the first time you heard the album?
That was the first album that I heard of Dream Theater, and I remember listening to it and thinking that it was a really unique combination of the progressive rock that I was really enjoying at the time, and also a metal edge to it.
Yeah.
But what really got to me was the virtuosity. I just thought that was such a great mixture because I hadn't heard that before. I hadn't really heard, first of all, the progressive with that kind of metal approach, and the fact that they were in that mode and also could really play like that. I was like, these are some interesting guys.
Yeah.
So it caught my ear and my interest, and that's why I even went to meet them and started checking it out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've heard you mention in interviews before that the playability of each member is sort of the lore of Dream Theater, like in its own way. Like the band's great collectively, but everyone in the band individually is so good that it's like it's kind of makes for a fun time.
It's not, and it's fun, and it's also important to me because as somebody who takes my instrument and my discourse of musical life very seriously, to be surrounded by people who are also as focused and driven to to reach a higher level is just inspiring. So it's just a great thing to have a band and these kind of people around me.
Absolutely. So obviously there's a lot of albums and a lot more anniversaries are going to be coming up quickly.
Right, sure.
Do you guys plan on revisiting any other major milestones or playing any other album in its entirety?
We haven't really gotten that far yet. I mean, it's always possible.
Yeah.
It's not like we're sitting around, okay, well, on
right.
January 31st of 2019, it'll be this, and we'll tour with that. It's just like, not quite there.
Somebody actually, posted a comment. If you guys ever do a Scenes from a Memory anniversary, would you revisit the Kurzweil keyboard?
Oh, no, there's no possibility of that. But it's funny. The reason I wouldn't do that is because it's old and there's no support for those instruments anymore.
Kind of out of date.
My equipment needs are too great, and I need backups and I need things to work, and it just wouldn't make sense.
No, that makes sense. Definitely cool. Awesome. Another thing that just came out a few days ago was the announcement of the astonishing novel. That sounds amazing. Like, how did that kind of originate?
We have this friend Peter O'Rillian, who is a very fine author, and he's kind of been part of our kind of scene for a little while. And when this whole thing came up, Peter and I were talking, and he expressed an interest, and I kind of connected him with John. And James had been reading. James is a real reader, and he read some of his books and just loved them. So he was like, "John, you've got to do this," and so. This seemed to really, really make sense. So Peter was the perfect guy. He was familiar with Dream Theater.
Yeah.
He's a great writer. It just kind of worked out.
Awesome.
So
That sounds fantastic. I think that's going to come out amazing.
Yeah,
definitely. So I wanted to ask you about GeoShredder really quick. Now, obviously, the app's fantastic, and you're going to perform a little bit for us here in a second. But the question I have a friend. His name's Dan Beal, and he is a elementary school music teacher in New Jersey. Yeah. I think he made a video for you about it too, where like he's really incorporating GeoShred into like the curriculum and teaching kids, and obviously you could pick the scale you want so you don't hit any wrong notes, and like kids like really seem to be like enjoying that. Like when you first created the app, did you think it would have like a use in education like that?
Well, I've had this app company now for a bunch of years, and there are actually certain apps that are a little bit more geared towards allowing people who are not musicians to just like freely make music and kind of create sounds that would be very musical but difficult to play if you weren't a musician. Something like a Morph Whiz, which was my first app. So what you said, actually being able to choose different modes or scales and not play a wrong note, that actually isn't the case with GeoShred. You could play a wrong note pretty easily. But we can highlight the name of notes on the screen, which is cool because it's a nice guide. Right. But you can still play any of the chromatic notes. But other apps of mine will limit it, like Morph Whiz or Sample Whiz or Tachyon, and do things like that. So GeoShred's geared more towards, I'm not going to discourage somebody who is like a non-musician to play with it, because I think it's very cool and fun and makes some good sounds. But it really is a musical instrument. It's a pretty serious musical instrument for the iPad, and maybe in the future for other platforms. But yeah,
I mean, you use it live all the time. So.
Yes, I do. I use it on recording even more so. I used it on the last Jordan Rudess album, all over the place for a lot of the leads that I played. It really is pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of leads, we had an episode a couple of months ago where I had a couple keyboard guys on, and they were kind of going back and forth on what their favorite Jordan Rudess solos are.
Yeah.
Do you have one? Do you have a favorite solo from a Dream Theater album?
No, not really.
Not really?
No. I put so much effort into anything and everything that I put out there. Right. It's just, I can't really pinpoint one that was, at least at this moment.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's like asking me my favorite album. That's hard too,
Yeah, of course. I think the decision came down to Octavarium at the end of that, of that episode. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there's so many amazing ones. It's hard to kind of pinpoint. So I had a couple questions about gigs and like keyboard, like your rig in general.
Sure.
Do you prefer large gigs or small intimate gigs?
That's a good question. Like, it's really fun to play for a large crowd and get that kind of like adrenaline rush. I find what happens with these really, really large gigs, like this one we played in Woodstock. It's called Woodstock, and actually it's nothing to do with little to do with the original, but it's in Poland, and they had like some amazing, maybe you read about it, some amazing number, 500,000 or more people there. And what generally happens is this huge kind of like rush of energy, and then it kind of settles into like nothing more than normal for whatever reason. It's almost like your emotions and your nervous system just doesn't know what to do with it, so it just kind of like makes it into something you can handle. So I find that playing the most exciting gigs are the ones that are like in like a hometown gig in a really beautiful theater, maybe even for videoing for a live concert release or something like that. So it doesn't matter. What's really funny for performers, most of us, is that as far as nerves go or excitement, you could get more nervous with somebody like, let's say, this close, just watching you play, than you would if you were playing in front of a few thousand people, and they're kind of like further away from you. It's a little bit of like that distance that changes the energy between like how you're relating to the audience.
Sure.
You got the bigger lights too. The bigger, like it gives you more separation.
Yeah, there's definitely there can be a separation, or people are right up to the stage. Leaning on the stage, they're really close to you. It might make you feel a little bit different as well.
Yeah, like I saw you guys last night in Clearwater, and I mean, like the fans were so close. I mean, James was giving them high fives during the show. You know what I mean? So I mean,
glad I'm not the lead singer.
Definitely. So I got two questions here. I know most of this is from the fans and stuff, but there's two questions that I always told myself if I ever got to meet you, I would ask.
Cool. Okay.
I'm like a geek when it comes to like stuff, so I had very specific questions.
That's
so. One thing that always amazed me, and maybe you can kind of explain the process a little bit, is how you organize like the million presets you use during a night to make sure that everything kind of flows like transition.
It's always a bit of work to get it to that point to make it flow. But in a way, it's fairly simple because what I do is I for years I've tended to use like one like really powerful instrument as the center of my whole rig.
Right.
So in this case, it's the Korg Kronos. It's like the Korg's mothership keyboard. It's really very powerful.
It's beautiful, yeah.
But even before I had this kind of power, I would still try to get done what I needed to do on one instrument, rather than like the old approach that like the
50
Frog
keyboards all around.
guys, the Rick Wakeman approach, which is fine and fun and great, but that's not my approach. And one of the reasons, there's a couple reasons I do that. One of which is that I don't want to be lifting up my hands in the middle of every musical phrase. So if I'm going da 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 da, and then I want to jump over there, I find that a lot of the guys who do that, they let go too soon so they can reach over to the other thing. I care too much about the music and
It's almost like a miss
the
note.
integrity of the music and the phrase to be able to have to be lifting my hands up and moving to the other keyboard, quickly.
Amazing.
So rather than doing that, I choose to do it on one instrument. And also, I like to be able to increment like throughout the show. So like during, like a big song, like an epic song, there might be like, 50 or more patches, like a Count of Tuscany or Octavarium. I'm literally just stepping through 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4, 5, 6, 7. And on the new Korg Kronos, they have this technology which allows me to basically, let's say, hold a patch. Like I can hold a big combination that might be a strings, choir, and French horn sound. And while I'm holding that, I can change sounds, still hear what I'm holding, and then put my hands down on like the piano sound. And there's no interruption in the reverb, the effects, or anything. So it's really, really seamless. It's perfect.
Awesome.
So there's a bit of pre-production that I do at home, but by the time I get to the stage, everything's like totally in order,
Yeah.
and I just bang through it. So.
Is there a way to go back if you accidentally step like too many times to go over a
Well, I
patch?
wouldn't do it with the pedal. I just have one pedal that takes me forward, but I would just hit the button on the
the
keyboard.
button.
Oh, oops!
Easy.
It's happened. It's definitely
It's happened, yeah.
Or actually, there's like just a touch screen on the Kronos. So I can just point back to the one that I want.
Perfect.
It's not the end of the world. It's not,
No.
not great. But
And my other question I always wanted to ask you, obviously there's 4 Dream Theater albums up before you joined the band. What was your
how
process?
dare they?
How dare they? I know. They're all terrible. No, I'm just kidding. But somebody's being hunted down. How was the process for you creating those sounds for yourself so that you could go back and play, that older material?
Of the older material?
Yeah.
Well, I try, I try to kind of match when appropriate the sounds that were made, like on past albums, It's not necessarily difficult to do, but sometimes it's a bit of searching. I remember actually making, the first time I programmed like Metropolis,
Sure.
and there's like a certain string sound, which is kind of like it's a very Dream Theater, like a layered kind of string sound, not necessarily that realistic, but it's more string pad, with a slightly realistic sound, and some different octaves, and it just makes that sound that you hear in a lot of Dream Theater records.
Right.
And so I worked, to create that sound and find it with my technology, because I was never using the same stuff that like Kevin Moore was using.
Right. So you can't call Kevin. Like you email me all your presets from that.
Well, no, especially because Kevin Moore, I've never even met him. He's completely, I don't know.
Gone off,
he's
yeah.
gone off the face of the earth as far as my perspective goes.
Sure.
That said, I wouldn't mind, running into the guy and shaking his hand
Yeah,
once.
of
I've been
course,
playing
of
his,
course.
his music for so many years, and I respect it, and I think he's very talented. But
No, I can tell that about you. Like you guys had Derek Sherinian on stage once for that When Dream and Day Unite kind of reunion.
Right,
And
right.
that was, I have the DVD. I wasn't there, obviously.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean,
yeah,
awesome.
that was fun.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the past.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I have anything to worry about.
I've come to terms with it all, right?
So my last question for you, I know you're a busy guy. Now that you have written this masterpiece, which is to me what The Astonishing is, just a masterpiece of...
Tell our metal fans that.
I am...
You can get into a war with them.
Yeah.
It's good. It sucks. It's good. It sucks. No, it's
Well,
the best thing. It's the worst thing.
I've had this argument on the
God.
podcast before, like, if you really, like, cut and spliced all the heavy moments on The Astonishing,
Right.
it equals more time than, like, Train of Thought would.
Well, there
You know
you
what I
go.
mean?
That's a good
Like,
thing to write.
you know,
It's all.
Just enjoy the intro and the outro that are a little more
We
mellow.
have a divided fan base.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Yeah.
You always have though, even
Well,
back in
right.
the 6 Degrees days. I mean, there's always everyone has an opinion. That's the problem when people are so passionate about it.
And if we release an album that's super heavy, then everybody's going to be saying, "Oh, but you guys were so melodic in the Astonishing, and what happened?" You're like, you cannot win.
Well, the one thing all the fans agree on is we all want an Astonishing DVD. I don't know when that's coming.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, that'll happen at some point, but
Beautiful.
I don't know exactly when.
I hear you. So my last question for you, sir. So obviously you guys have written this masterpiece that includes musical themes for so many characters and places. Is there any like TV show or musical or movie or anything that does that you really enjoy? Like something that inspired you in that direction?
I think that John has been asked kind of like that question, how it came about, because he wrote the story, and he always points to like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all those kind of, all those kind of movies and tales, and I think that's the spirit of it. So and for me, I mean, I enjoy kind of like scoring. So although I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to do that because I'm always busy touring and recording, I kind of have a natural feel for the film score type of needs. I mean, that's musically where I'm coming from, to be able to come up with different emotions quickly and improvise and come up with different orchestral sounds and all this kind of stuff. So for me, it was a great project musically, and I could relate. And I also like that kind of, Lord of the Rings type of,
You're
fiction.
the wizard.
So good point. So I could relate to that and every aspect of it. So that's kind of why it came together and where it came from.
Perfect. Yeah, and I mean, just in the video that you and John released, or a couple of videos so far, kind of going over the themes of the Astonishing, you can kind of see that so evident, the way you guys change keys to get certain emotions out of things. And I mean,
it was awesome. It was a really kind of cool puzzle that we put together of building themes for different characters, different sounds and different moods, and coming back to things and just incorporating. Like there are probably themes in there that, we have this video now that we put out showing like where themes recur. Yeah. But there's a lot more than that too. So
probably every note, it
was a big, right. It's a major job as far as that kind of planning. Yeah. Within the story itself and within the music. And it's funny, like you've got these, fans who are like, seems to my memory, had a much better story or this or that, and I'm going, people have no idea like what the differences are in the depth and the background and just every aspect of what went into the one album compared together. I will say that as much as I think Seems to My Memory is a great album, it doesn't even hold a candle story-wise to Astonishing, as far as just the depth of it and what it really is and all the pieces that got put together. The scope is a whole different thing. I mean, people can like what they want, and I'm not going to tell people not to like one album more than the other. Right. But when they say, the story of this, it's like, I don't know. There's this...
Like, you couldn't turn Scenes into, like, a real novel. You know what I mean?
They'd have to do a whole lot of work.
They'd have to add quite a bit of story themselves. Right. But no, man, I mean, and, the other thing about The Astonishing, I mean, it's been said, like, several times, James just killed it on this album.
He did, yeah.
Fantastic.
He did a great
and
job.
He kills it live. Last night, the guy did an amazing job.
Good,
like,
good.
Yeah, I mean, all of you did, obviously.
Yeah,
of course.
Cool. Yeah,
but
he's got a big job there.
He's got a big... Yeah, I've never seen him on stage so much.
No, he's, being a whole, like, schizophrenic there, changing personalities and getting really
Especially
quiet.
during 3 days, he really kind of, like, tweet.
Yeah, right.
Like, I seen it in his eyes from, like, in the crowd. Like, he kind of switched, like...
Yeah, he's pretty tweaked anyway. He's funny.
Well, Jordan, that's all I had from you, man. Did you have any last comments or anything you want to let the fans know?
I'll play you a few sounds.
Yes,
we're on
please.
audio here. You can hear this app.
Yeah, let's do it.
Most people know what it sounds like, but we've got it sitting right here. So this is the sound I use in a lot of the lead sections, and I used it on The Astonishing. So let's see. A New Beginning is the song that it's on, but I'll just play a little bit here.
That's amazing,
There you
dude.
go.
I love the way you just
Yeah,
build
cool.
chords and harmonize like so
Yeah.
so effortlessly.
Well, one of the fun things to do with it is it's got this mode. I originally designed with a friend of mine this kind of idea. A guy named Rob Fielding, who's a really smart, nice guy, and he he programmed this cool mode where you can, even in a small area, be able to jump through the range of an instrument. So even if I play like, so I'm just using one row of notes.
That's
I'm playing
not
the
even
same, right? I'm playing the same notes repeatedly, but it automatically, based on some rules about interval, will go. It always chooses to go the smaller distance when it goes over a certain interval. So for the musicians out there, if you go above a tritone, you play like a fifth, like let's say from C up to G. It'll actually choose to go it'll go down to G because it's a smaller interval. It's a fourth. So that's why when I play like, and I do that again, which I play D, F sharp, A. So I go down a fifth, it goes up. So I can go up and down that way. And of course, the sliding is the other great thing about GeoShred.
Yeah.
For anybody who always wanted to play like a fretless instrument, like like Steve Vai or something like that, or Jeff Beck, this is kind of like a really cool way to get that approach done, because you can play any note, and when your finger lands on it, it'll be totally in tune. And then when you slide, it's also in tune. So.
That's amazing, man. I think you're just pioneering the future of music. Like,
Oh, I'm having fun.
really. Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much for that little performance.
You're
That's
welcome, man.
beautiful.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, James. Oh, James, wow. Jordan.
I am James.
I am. Thank you so much, man.
You're welcome.